Hi, everyone. Welcome to our one-year review of results from this past year's group consciousness experiment that we've been conducting every month on the 11th with our global water ceremony of love and gratitude for peace. And we're super grateful for everyone who's been participating every month. Together, we're exploring the power of consciousness through water-based science. Hello, everyone. I'm Lindsay Fox, water researcher and founder at Water Peace Project. And today I'm joined by our collaborator and advisor, Anton Fedorenko. Hello, Anton. Thank you for your resonance and joining me today to review our results. Welcome.
Hi, Lindsay. Thank you very much for doing this.
Awesome. And I know a lot of you have been waiting for this also. For those of you who are joining the first time, we're Water Peace Project, and we're in collaboration with Cybertronica and Aquapsy to conduct a series of scientific experiments where global participants are joining online at the same exact time to focus their attention to the same water sample at the same time. And Anton Fedorenko is the developer of Aquapsy, which is the platform we're using to conduct our experiments. Anton created Aquapsy to document the effects of consciousness to water. And in this case, we're experimenting with large groups of people concentrating on the same water sample at the same exact time. And these collective consciousness experiments are ongoing. So far, we've conducted 12 monthly experiments in this past year for this series. And our research was published this past year, focusing collective attention, the targeted Maharishi effect is the title of the paper, which was written by Dr. Serge Kernbach, our advisor, and he is at Cybertronica, and he's the developer of this sensor. And so it's used to measure subtle changes in water. So if anybody wants to read more about that or download the paper, you can just go to waterpeaceproject.org and you can download that free there. So I'd like to open up the floor for Anton now. He's going to explain a little bit more about the technology we're using for these experiments and also the results with regards to the probability of our effect and also our experiment hygiene from a scientific perspective. And we'll review the measurements from each month and what types of measurements it takes and how to interpret the data that we're collecting. And also how these results compare to the control. But most importantly, what our conclusion is so far and how we can improve the experiment hygiene for the next series of 12 experiments. So Anton, welcome. Thank you for joining us again.
Lindsay, and thank you very much for doing everything you're doing, organizing all these experiments, bringing people together, conducting this collective consciousness research, because I think it's very important and interesting, because there is research when one person can do experiment and do their own training, see how they can affect the water, but with a collective, it's completely different type of the experiments. So thank you very much for doing it, and thank you everyone for joining those experiments. And I hope we'll be going deeper and deeper, studying this, figuring out how to do even better and better effects. And just we'll see what the phenomena is all about. So I'll show the couple of slides, show the technology, how it works, what measurements we do, how do we process the data, and then also what results we received so far. And as usually in the beginning, I would like to talk about kind of vision and maybe some applications, what motivate us to do this research, how can it be used in the future. And at the moment when people, we born, so far there's no much application or research how we can use our consciousness in terms of something physical, to change physical properties of some media or effect with just our thoughts, some events remotely. But people talking about it, that maybe it's possible, maybe it's coming from some sci-fi movies, but there is, it's maybe was first how scientists were motivated but then they going into research and finding that's actually the case, that it's possible. But for the most people, it sounds unrealistic, and that's usually happens because there is no reliable verification tools that can tell you and show, yeah, this works, and that's how it works. For example, when you didn't have any microscope, you didn't know about microorganisms. You didn't know that in the little drop of water that you take from the river, there can be like 1,000 different microorganisms. So tools are very important to do that. And thankfully, there is Cybertronic Research who are doing this for many years, developing very precise technology to measure, as you mentioned, subtle energies, subtle changes in the water. So when we affect with our low energy consciousness impact, we can see something. And in future, if we will be have really good and reliable available device to measure it, more people will be convinced, and more people will be, I think, participating in the collective experiments, and that will be open up more opportunities for people, do things directly with their consciousness, such things even more self-healing, maybe even climate balancing, distant healing. I know people already using this now, but with more research and more tools, it can be done better. World peacekeeping and many other things, whatever comes in the mind. Yeah, but we need now to focus on the research and to see how this phenomena works. And as I mentioned, yeah, we use the electroimpedance spectrometer to do this kind of research. This is one of the versions of their device. Yeah, and I think the most important part compared to other electroimpedance spectrometers that are there in the market is kind of a standard device for the research. But I think very important part that this device can do measurement continuously. It can measure 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, just all year round, measure, because this will give you opportunity to do control better. In each of those, you can see on the picture, it has two samples, two chambers. Initially, it was considered that one of the channels are control, another test. You affect one channel, another kind of stays unaffected, so you can compare two of them, how the curves go. But so far, it's not considered as best control, because even if you affect one channel, they stay too close to each other, both can be affected. So we always analyze kind of readings from two channels. But the best control, so this is a typical results graph after each session. And on the white area, you see what was happening before the session even started. And on this gray area, this is measurement during the session when people were affected. It has four graphs. These two graphs for the measurement of the impedance of those two water samples. And the blue and green line, it's measurement for the temperature. So each of those chambers have two sensors, measuring impedance and measuring temperature. Everything measures very precisely. It's not like 1 or 2 degrees. It's power 10 power minus 3. So it's really precise and really small changes of the temperature. And as I mentioned, yeah, we measure always. So we have, this is very important part, and this is considered to be control. So before we started the experiment, we always know what was happening to sensor before we started the impact. So then we can kind of see what was happening during the impact, and then kind of see whether change here is significant, measurement here is significant to this measurement, and we calculate so-called psi value. In some way, we calculate deviation of these lines from just baseline during the 30-minute period and divide it into deviations of these lines during this period. So it means that the value, which we call psi, in each experiment results on the AquaPsy, you can see psi value. So the higher the psi, the higher the effect it shows. So it means the bigger deviation of this graph. You can see here temperature was really significantly changed during the experiment, but the impedance compared to the control didn't change much. And the next very important value which we calculate, and that it's called Provalue, and actually Provalue is so far we consider the most important value all of this. And how do we calculate this Provalue? Provalue means probability that our impact during the active session was significant. And it's calculated based on the also previous historical measurements. Let's call active session the session when we actually were affecting the water sample. And here we call it the green color. And the previous sessions, previous 47 sessions, passive sessions when no one was influencing, and they will be just passive sessions. We consider them as a control. So to calculate one Provalue, we need to have 47 measurements, 47 psi values of the 48 psi values of 48 sessions, with one of them value of the active session. So when we have these 48 measurements, we arrange them from the smallest to the greatest psi value. And then we find where is our psi value of our active session is located. If it's closer to the top, so the higher it's to the top, the higher the probability that our impact was significant. If our psi value is really low, and I will remind that psi value low, it means that, for example, if this temperature would be just going here, just continue its path, or around zero here, we would get psi value like very small. And if it's changed here like really well compared to this thing, then our psi value is really high. So these psi values are arranged. And also important here to note that sometimes, and this is kind of realistic, example of this distribution, because sometimes even if no one was influencing during the session, during the 30-minute period, water temperature impedance also could change due to some local factors, because this sensor even stays in the closed lab, no one goes inside, and it stays in the closed thermo-isolating container. So there is really minimal influences. Still, there can be something happening to water. I even was observing that you have these two water samples, stay together to each other. So that should be absolutely the same, or very, very close to each other conditions for those water samples. But you can see behavior of those water samples, one kind of just normal behaving, and another going crazy. Just start something happening with the impedance. It's kind of living their own life. So therefore, even if no one influencing the sample, it still can have that high deviations, high psi values. And therefore, it's important to have not only one experiment, not only one active session, and then you see, yes, I was able to influence. Because it could just happen that because it was a coincidence that you came to do session at the time when something else affected the sensor. Therefore, you need to do many sessions. And if it's always you have high psi values in your experiment, then it becomes not coincidence anymore. So here, for example, again, if your solid values of your active session is really high, Provalue is will be 90%. So it means that 90% probability that your effect was significant caused by you, not by some local conditions. And to confirm that it's actually by you, you need to do many sessions and then have average value and have standard deviation of that average value. I would compare this whole device and the process like as almost like a random process. If you have a 48 sided dice and you throw it 1,000 times, and then you will sum up all the values you get with each throw. You sum them up, divide on the 1,000 number of throws, you would get the average value of mean value of 24.5. If you, I don't know, let's say have some special skills, telekinesis or something, and you throw the dice and you maybe try mentally to affect the dice, and you get after 1,000 throws mean value, I don't know, like 35 or like 30 even, that's already somehow you shifted that mean value. You affected the mean value, and so it's not supposed to happen. Like in the average, it should be this value, but somehow you affected. Yeah, I see it right now that in some way we can consider that all this water works the same way, but it's easier to affect the water. It seems it's easier to affect the water, to change the water impedance or slight temperature than the dice, but it's also working the same way. It has its also average value. This Provalue of this device is 50%. So if you in your experiment get Provalue like higher than that, if you intended, you intended always to increase it. So as a result, you should get the Provalue 50%, and it would be significant. Then we can conclude that there was some impact on the water, that the water not just randomly changed. So now let's see what results we got after 12 months experiments. We were doing them once a month. Each time I think it was participating at least 200 people during actual session. And then we also had some people like participating in the experiment even after it finished. We'll talk about that later, how that's maybe also affected the whole experiment. So here are the Provalues of each experiment. And we started in August last year. And this is red line is 50%, just to show you that if you're kind of going above that line, it was kind of significant effect. If you're below or near that line, it was just not significant effect. And it seemed that first 4 experiments, when we were just starting, we got pretty big, large Provalues. And I remember we also did overview of the experiments after 4 experiments. And in average, it was 75%, around 75% Provalue on the 4 experiments here, which was pretty impressive. But later, it seems we got all later experiments, we got closer to 0.5, so 50%. And in the average, around the 12 experiments, we got actually 56% plus minus 18. Yeah, so we can see that even if this is a little bit higher than 50% mean value, we have big like standard deviation of this measurements, because we, big window starting from about 30% and goes all the way up to about 80%. Therefore, we have this big window. So the next step of all of this would be, first of all, like we need to have more experiments to see bigger picture, and hopefully this number will go down, will be more precise, and we'll introduce some additional improvements to the purity of the experiment, because what we assume happened here in our experiment, so when we were releasing the video, each time our video include the water sample, photo of the water sample, and we were affecting the water sample. But that photo was existing in public even the experiment finished. So therefore, that could affect the passive sessions as well, when we kind of consider that no one influences, but because people would still had access to the image, they would still may be affected. So maybe after some time, more and more that effect being or caused the impact. I think Lindsay will talk more about how we're going to organize the experiment further. Yeah, but we'll do that to increase the informational hygiene of the experiment, so it will be more cleaner. And we know that yeah, for sure have to be done. Yes, and we will need to have more experiments.
Excellent. Anton, that was a great presentation, and it's really great to see all those values lined up like that. And, in the bigger picture, we really only have a tiny bit of data when you consider we're comparing each, month to month. So we have 12 experiments logged for this series. And, like Anton explained, when you get into the quantum aspect of having that water sample image live on the video, which is basically, we live streamed it, so the video is still there. You can look at the water sample anytime. Definitely on a quantum level has an impact. So it could, muddy the hygiene, so to speak. So to fine tune things, we're going to clean up the hygiene for the next, 12 experiments, let's say. We're going to make the water sample only be available to be seen during the experiment. So what that will mean is if you're currently joining via live stream on our Facebook, you're just going to see the guided session. But in order to participate in the actual live experiment and see the water sample, you will actually have to log directly onto Aquapsy. So when you do that, you will click the experiment that you want to join. And it's so easy to join. It's free. You just enter in your email address, and then you click the experiment that you want to join. And it also will send you notifications. I think it sends you like a 25-minute notification, right, Anton? Something like that. And so we'll continue to share our monthly water ceremony on Facebook Live. We've been holding this ceremony for a decade now, but it's just this experiment in the past year. However, like we said, if you want to participate in this data that we're collecting, having an effect on the water sample, log on to Aquapsy, just put your email address in. That way we can continue to conduct these experiments, but with more controlled setting. And so we hope that you'll join us again. On August 11th, we have special guest Auntie Adelia Sandoval. She's spiritual overseer from the Acjachemen Nation in Southern California. And we also have our mana keeper, LaruaSa, Pele, Lafoia, joining us again. So if you want to learn more about our monthly experiments, the past research, we have everything on waterpeaceproject.org, our schedule. You can download the paper, and everything we offer is free. So all it takes is your sincere heart to participate. And Anton, thank you, and I love you so much for your resonance, taking the time to review these results. And if anybody has a question, especially like a more scientific one, if you didn't understand anything, just put a comment below and we will write back to you. And we really want to send our love and gratitude to everyone that's participated, especially our honorary guests every month that have been joining us to hold this sacred space and create this connection through water, and especially all of you for joining us online. And as you know, because water is a liquid crystal, with the natural ability to record, store, and transmit wave information, we can all connect through water from anywhere, anytime. And all it takes is your sincere heart. So thank you so much, everyone. And we hope to see you on August 11th. Be sure to go ahead and go to aquapsy.com and put your email address in there and sign up for the experiment so you can participate. Anton, thank you so much for everything and sharing all that. And thank you, everyone.
Thank you very much, Lindsay. Thank you, everyone, very much.
Thank you very much. See you later. Bye.
Bye-bye.